Alright. Okay. I'm gonna start my screen share. And hopefully everyone can see that. All right, I'm just gonna mute people. All right, so thank you for everyone joining. The purpose of this is just to provide a very high-level basic introduction into web app testing. I'm just going to go over how I set things up, provide a very brief introduction into things like burp and how you... Sorry, getting some background noise. How you use burp to do things like intercept the web traffic, modify it, inject malicious payloads into it, and then perhaps provide one or two examples. Later series, I will go into the different things like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, and more in depth. But yeah, this first session is just to get you up to speed, get you initially set up. So let me share my camera. All right. So what I have here is, one other thing. The purpose of this is to have it as interactive as possible. So please feel free to jump in. I've muted everyone, but just unmute yourselves or type in the chat. I'll try to follow the chat as best as possible. If you want any further explanation or you want me to show you something else, or just pop in and let me know. Okay, so this here is a base install of Kali. The only difference between this install and the ISO is it's just up to date. So some of the things that you would need for web app pen testing are things like Burp Suite. Kali comes with Burp Suite Community Edition. It's an excellent tool. The Pro version I've obviously got to pay for, but the Community Edition is a great tool if you're just starting off. There are other tools such as OWASP Zap. Zap is also a fantastic tool. Personally, I prefer Burp, but I'll also show how you can get Zap working as well. Does the same thing as Burp. Obviously, your browser, Firefox, comes with Kali. I'll show you, walk through how to configure Firefox. And then there's some other tools, both online, such as Qualys, SSL Scan, that you can use to scan SSL. And I'll cover that briefly. So starting off, assuming you've got a base installation, some of the things that I use, or some of the Firefox add-ons that I use that make life so much easier. So one of them is Firefox as a container. Now, this is going to be really useful if you're testing or want to test different user accounts at the same time and compare things. So what this plugin allows for is for you to have different sessions within the same browser. So you don't have to close the browser, reopen it, or open up a new browser or whatever, it allows you to have different tabs that essentially have different sessions. So just clicking through this, I generally remove these. So just edit containers, remove these base ones, and I typically find I only need 2, so I just call it session 1 and session 2. And I give them different colors. So I'll come back to this later and show you this actually in use. And then the other add-on that I like is a proxy add-on. Oh, it is Proxy Switcher Mega. It just makes life so much easier, especially if you need to switch between things like Burp or go directly via your either corporate proxy or directly out to the internet. It just saves additional time having to go into Firefox settings and changing it. It'll also allow you to simultaneously kind of use Burp and Zap, switching between the two quite easily, and it has some auto switching capabilities, so it can make that life so much easier. So for now, I'm just going to configure it to use Burp. So Burp is a proxy that will run locally on port 8080, and I will rename this to Burp. Let's rename it and call it Burp. And again, I'll come back to this and show you it in actual use. Right, so this is what I typically have as a base setup for my browser. The next thing we're going to do is fire up Burp Suite. So as I said, this is the community edition. Some of the big differences between the community and professional edition are, oh, great, of course this is not going to work now. There we go. Okay, just ignore that. All right, so some of the differences is the community edition, you cannot run, you can't save projects. With the pro version you can, so that's useful if you, especially doing a pen test or something against the client, you save different projects for different clients or different systems you're testing. Community edition, you only have the temporary, so you can't persist any of the traffic in that you've sent. This here is all pretty much the same between the two. And then once you get into it, the other big differences is the Pro version has the ability to run scans. So kind of think of it automated pen test against the target. Community edition, you can't. There are limitations around Intruder and some of the options, but I'll go into those at a later stage. So the main tab here is the proxy tab. This is probably going to be where you spend most of the time. Intercept is where you want to stop the traffic and view it, modify it. You can also specify whether you say it's, for instance, a request, if you want to then intercept the response to that request. So for now, we'll leave intercept off. HTTP history is where all the requests are going to show up, all the requests that are going through Burp Suite. There are different filters. As you can see, the Pro version allows you to search through all requests. Unfortunately, the Community Edition doesn't have that, but you can still filter out on things like images, CSS, if you want to include those, as well as file extensions. So let's start off with a simple example. So this is where I'm going to start using the proxy switcher. So now I have switched to Burp Suite. Now you immediately see this, it's saying your connection is not secure. This is because Burp Suite's intercepting the connection between my browser and addons.mozilla.org. So if you're testing sites that are served over HTTPS, you're going to have to perform this action in order to allow you to view the traffic that comes back from Burp. And what you will be doing is going to basically the Burp kind of web page that it shows when you hit the Burp Suite itself, and you will want to install the CA certificate. This will mean that Burp Suite's going to get the certificate from the server that you're trying to connect to, addons.mozilla.org, and it's going to try to reproduce that certificate signing with its own CA. And this is why you need to download the CA and trust the CA. So you're going to trust the certificate that's presented by Burp Suite. Again, that's probably getting into the weeds, but we can always cover certificates at a later stage. So for now, just to make sure you go to the settings, privacy and security, and go to your certificate settings and import that certificate as a trusted CA. It's up to you whether you want to trust emails. I'll just usually click through all of these. I mean, this is a test, so it's not going to really do too much harm. Certainly you wouldn't want to use this for day-to-day web app browsing. So now if I come here and refresh this, that's weird. Let's double check it's in here. So to make sure it's imported, you can scroll. You want to see port swigger. That looks like some other error. I don't know what's going on. But so we go to some other site. Oh, great. Burp Suite's not playing ball. Joys of live demos. I'll have to have a look at this, but this is some other SSL error. It could be the version of Java that's been used by Burp in the back end. But as you can see, it's starting to detect traffic. So what I have set up is a vulnerable web app that we'll use for the remainder of this. So if I go to my web app that's running locally, and this is WebGoat. It's a really useful web app to spin up. You can run it within a Docker instance, so it's pretty easy. The instructions are available online, and it's got different lessons. So if we log in, so it's got different lessons here that you can go through. Again, as I said, the goal of this is just to introduce basic web app tools and processes that you go through to kind of get you based for your initial web app test. So as I come back to Burp Suite, should now start seeing it up. So as I said, this is primarily going to be where you're going to spend quite a bit of your time. And you can see the request being made, and in the bottom panel here, this is the actual request. Different tabs here show you the parameters sent, headers, and even the hex value of the request. So this is good if you're trying to do packet captures and kind of comparing the two. And then you can see the associated response, again with headers, hex, HTML. And render is also useful at times, so it just saves you trying to have to go back to the browser and see what it looks like in the browser. You can actually view it here. Now render is obviously only going to really work for content that the browser would render. So for example, if you go to JavaScript, there's no render because you don't render JavaScript. The other thing that you can do with this is right click and see the different options. So another tab that you're probably going to spend quite a bit of time in is repeater. So repeater is, as the name suggests, allows you to repeat a request. So here we can see the request, click go, it will send off the request and you'll get the response. Now the purpose of this is so I can start modifying data. So if I change this to a -1 and see what the response is like. So I get a different response. Again, the same kind of tabs or subtabs here, and you can follow a redirection if you get a 302. Again, you can render. This is really useful, especially if you're testing for things like cross-site scripting or trying to modify the web UI via some sort of injection attack. You can create new ones, just clicking on the little 3 icons there, and you can go off and add your own. Personally, I don't do this because I find it's a bit tricky at times and doesn't always seem to work that well. So I generally just pick a request in the proxy and send it to the repeater again, and I just modify where it's going to. So I can just change this to ABCD and then see the response. Right, so I'm going to pause there for a moment. Are there any questions from anyone? Just trying to catch up on all the chat. Okay, it doesn't look like there are any questions. Right, so carrying on. Another area in Burp Suite that you will interact with from time to time is Intruder. So again, send a request to Intruder, or you can also create your own. But again, I generally tend to send requests to Intruder. Now, what this will allow you to do is send requests to the target. So obviously you specify your target server here. And then there's payloads. So think of this as kind of an automated way of sending multiple requests, changing different parts of that request. So for example, if I want to try the session ID and just start enumerating different numbers, I'd set the payload here. It auto detects it, but you can clear it. You can add your own payload. So if I wanted to change that to, say, WebGoat, whatever's between these squiggly brackets is considered kind of a placeholder, a variable, however you want to think of it. But say, for instance, the session ID, I want to start just enumerating a list of numeric values. There's this list here, and there's different payloads that you can have. So, for example, for numbers, I want to generate sequential 1 to 10 and step 1. So what this will do is generate requests where the JSession ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., all the way up to 10. So if I run the attack, again, free versions limited. I think it limits the amount of sequential requests that you can send. And here we go. You can see it. There's the payloads. And if I start looking through the payloads, you can see the session ID going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, the different payloads are going to be useful. So there's a whole bunch here, but you can obviously have payloads that you get from the file. So say, for example, you have a file with your favorite cross-site scripting payloads. Put those in the file, configure the payload itself, the position, and you can actually automatically inject those. There's iterators. Burp Suite Pro has some built in, but yeah, again, can cover this another day. One other payload is the null payload. So say you want to try generate the same request over and over and over. So yeah, we can do it, I don't know, 10 times. This is now going to generate the same request 10 times. So this is useful when you're trying to do, say, a denial of service type approach where you just want to throw the same request at a server that you know might take additional compute power to process. You can throw the same request, and if you go Burp Suite Pro, you can create threads to indicate how many consecutive requests to send. Now, other parts, Scan is obviously part of the Pro version. Spider is used to Spider, so you can run this and it will start trying to crawl the site. So it will find links, basically click on each link to then find the next link and so on and so forth. And then Target is basically a list of all the sites or domains that you've visited. And then you can view the sitemap for those. And then again, you can view the different requests, kind of send it to the repeater, so on and so forth. One other thing that I only found out maybe a year ago is, unfortunately again, only in the Pro version, but you can discover content, and what this will do is use common directory name and file names and attempt to brute force those resources and build a sitemap that way. And you can add your own word list file to that as well. Some other useful utilities, so say you have two requests that you're sending, I don't know, you can send to comparer, so it will then compare the two requests or texts. You can even highlight the text and send it to comparer, and you compare it and you can compare it, and it will show you the difference. Similarly, you can do the same with the responses, and you can compare them and they should seem vastly different. The other thing is decoder. So this is useful if you see things like base64 encoded strings, just highlights what you want to, or actually send the entire thing to the decoder, and you can send it to a decoder and it will allow you to decode or even encode if you want to base64. It's not base64, but yeah, you can do these different ones here. Now, there are extensions. This allows you to add more features to Burp Suite. There are a whole bunch of, unfortunately, not all of them are available to the free version, but quite a few are. And yeah, you'll just go through these and see which ones you want. You're not going to need them all. And you might want to have them installed and disabled by default and enable them when you want to. So I don't know, try to find one that we might want. So CVSS calculator, you can install it. The other thing is you're going to have it set up. So you need Jython and JRuby installed in order for you to use or you need both of those if you want to use the extensions. The extensions will use either or. And then you can disable or enable extensions by clicking on there. And there's other information relating to the extension, such as error logs and that. And yeah. So that is Burp Suite. Now, as I mentioned, there is OWASP Zap, and this is where this plugin really starts becoming useful. So I can add a new one, and I'm going to add a new profile for Zap. I'll need to run it on a different port, and I'll apply the changes. So OWASP Zap is going to do the same thing as Burp Suite. It's a local proxy that will allow you to intercept the traffic, modify it. Again, there's also plugins for it that allow you to extend it. It's OWASP. For those who don't know, OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project. It's a charity-based organization that's focused on application security, and they provide different tools, and one of the things is those tools are going to be free. Now, getting this error because I have Burp listen on 8080, so we'll change Zap to listen on a different port. Now, Zap is free, so there's no notion of Pro or Community Edition. Whatever features are in Zap are available to everyone. A lot of the features in Burp Suite Pro are in fact available in Zap. It's a brilliant tool. Personally, I just find the UI and the overall experience of using Burp better than Zap, but it's also a personal preference. So if we change the local proxy to be 8081. So now we have Zap up and running on 8081. And if I come back here, and this is where this tool comes in really handy. Now just to change to Zap, I'll just go and switch proxies. Now my traffic is going to be going through Zap. So if we come to Zap again, we'll see there's all the traffic that came through. So this is pretty much the same as the proxy tab on Burp Suite. However, this is where the web UI is not as great, in my opinion, as Burp Suite. But you can see the request, you can see the response. There's no rendering like you have in Burp, but maybe there's. I've not played around with that too much. You can run automated scans, unlike Burp Suite Community Edition. This is all provided within Zap, freely available. So you can run these different scans. Active scan is the same as a pro scan with Burp Suite. And there is a way to intercept. I could remember how to intercept. I can't remember. Yeah, it's been a while since I've used Zap, but I am highlighting it because it is there, it's available, it's free, it's a great tool, but I personally prefer Burp Suite. I will try to do a better job of looking through Zap and doing perhaps another session on using Zap, because I imagine many people would want to use that because it's free. So the other thing I want to show is a SSL tool that I use often when I'm pen testing. So this is external facing, so I'm going to switch to direct so I don't have any intercepting traffic. And the one is called Qualys SSL Labs. And this is going to allow you to run a scan against a server to test the certificates and TLS SSL configuration on that server. So I don't know, let's choose one. Yes, let's go. So you enter in the host name. if you're scanning your own servers, make sure you tick this, because otherwise the results of this can appear on these boards and you don't want to be like one of these guys. And off it will go. Well, sometimes they are cached, so it can result instantaneously. You'll see once it's finished, you can rerun it without the cached version. Another tool that I use, I've not seen too many people use it, is HTBridge. This does the same job as the Qualys SSL server test, but it's a lot more flexible. So one of the things I found with the Qualys SSL apps test is you can't, well, I don't know if you can specify port numbers, but only certain port numbers. So for instance, I was trying to run a scan against the server running on port A333, and I couldn't do it with Qualys SSL Labs. Here you can actually specify the port number. Again, you can hide the results. And off we go, we'll run the scan. Finally, if you want to run these sort of tests locally, as test SSL .sh that I use often. So just clone this. There's typically a git location somewhere. There we go. So I just clone this. I'm just going to make some directories here. So the idea is this will be an ongoing sort of screencast share. So I'll make these different directories so we can use that later. And we'll clone this. Oh. Didn't copy that. So while that's downloading, let's just make sure. So this works, this gives ratings. A+ is the topmost. I think T is the worst. You really don't want it, but you really don't want anything, say, below a B. It's not that great. And obviously definitely don't want anything with like a T. And as I said, it goes through different things. It's going to check the certificate, check the chaining of that certificate, make sure that things like the certificate signed by a trusted CA, it's not expired, it is valid for that server, and it will also go through things like testing protocols, supported software suites. All of this we can cover at some later stage, but basically making sure that the configuration on the server for TLS is sound, and more information down here. This is also now complete. So again, this does the same thing, but some of the things I found pretty nifty is it'll tell you whether this passes the different sort of compliance standards that are out there, such as PSR, DSS, or HIPAA. And the other important thing is you can download a PDF of this report. Unfortunately, Qualys, there's no way to show your results other than copying this and sending this onto someone. And sometimes it's got to rescan, it takes time, whereas the PDF, unfortunately you've got to sign up and have an account now, but once you've done that, you can actually download the reports, the scan as a PDF and forward it on and share with with other people. But as I said, like it does the same things. So things like certificates, your protocols, software suites, all of that kind of thing. Again, I often find it's useful to not rely on one tool, try out different tools. Some tools have little quirks with them. They may find things that another tool might not. So there's certainly no harm in, especially something like this that's quick and easy, running multiple tools. And this one's got other nifty features like finds different subdomains and already scan them and that. So HTTP bridges is something that's underestimated in my case, in my opinion. Alright, so this should have downloaded by now. So to run this is really simple. Just run the script. The host that you want to scan, colon, and then the port. You can leave this off and it will default to 443 and off it will go. The reason why I've done this as opposed to some of the tools that are built within Kali, testssl.sh is one tool that I use often. It seems to offer some things that some of the tools that are built into Kali don't. Again, coming back to my previous point, I use multiple tools to often do the same thing, especially when they're just so easy and quick and easy to run. It takes me a few extra seconds and I can get a much better coverage. So while that's running, another tool that I run is SSL Scan. So this is built into Kali, so you just specify, again, same kind of format in terms of testssl.sh. As you can see, it's a lot faster, but it's probably not as thorough, where it's not testing things like these kind of things, Heartbleed, robots, or these known vulnerabilities. This is more a quick and dirty scan. So I'm going to pause there and see if anyone has questions. All right, I assume no other questions. So as I said, this was, well, it still is meant to be as interactive as possible. So just pop questions. I'll try keep a better view on the chat. Just trying to think of any other tools that I use really often to show you guys. So Mmap's another tool. What Mmap does is it's more of a network scan. So in terms of WebApp testing, it's not going to really be all that useful. This is more towards network type scanning, but at times it might be useful for WebApp scanning, because you might find open ports that may not or won't show when you hit in the web app. So for example, they might be running the admin interface on a different port. Not common, but it may help, may do that. So to run Nmap, just Nmap and then the service you want to run the Nmap scan against. I'm not going to run against the internet, so I'll choose an internal host. Now, there are different options. This is just the basic scan. I've got to admit, I'm no Nmap guru, but I think with the option SO, will try to detect the OS as well. So in the previous scan, we could see port 22 was open, 8080. When it says open, it's obviously open. Filtered means generally that the port's listening, but there's likely a firewall in place of it. Now that's going to take longer because it's trying to send probes to the target system to try work out what operating system it is running. So while that's running, I actually remembered a couple of tools that I also use. You'll see these are quite common. So one is a tool developed by Scope Helm called Security Headers. I've got to see the right URL. So this is kind of like the SSL, the Qualys SSL scan. It's going to scan, check against your headers, your HTTP headers, and look for security related ones, see how those are configured, and then give a score. So again, let's just test the same thing, Sky News. Again, if you're testing your own site, generally try hard the results, make it private. Generally try to do this for anything that you own. It's not going to completely avoid people running it, but it just helps prevent it showing up here. If you want to try both and get A+, well then obviously don't tick that, but yeah. So Sky got a C. It's not the end of the world, but certainly would expect like an A+ or something. That's the same sort of rating as SSL Labs. It shows you the headers that are set correctly. So it's got content type, strict HSTS, and XSS protection. Again, I'm using a lot of terms, sorry, but we'll cover those on later stages. And then it gives recommendations on the security headers that should be implemented. So yeah, play around with this. The other tool that's really useful is urlscan.io. This is going to hit the site that you specify and provide information about the site, such as what libraries are used, libraries in terms of JavaScript libraries, that kind of thing, as well as other information. Again, come to options, change it to a private scan if you're trying to scan your own things and don't want to show the results to the world. And off we'll go. So as you can see, it's taking a screenshot as well. While that's still running, let's come back to Nmap scan. Oh, that's still running. Okay, so this has run. So some of the information, it gives you the country where the server's running. Other related IPs to this, subdomains, the technologies that are running, primarily things like JavaScript libraries. Also tries to detect what web server it's running on, certificate information. Yeah, so just go through this, have a wonder. It's really useful if you also want to try header sites, but not use your own IP in that. It also gives the HTTP transactions that it was able to perform. and you can drill into them, see more information about them. Okay, so it's run. Great, awesome. So it actually shows what I was talking about earlier. So these open/filtered means there's likely a firewall blocking this. And was it able to detect the OS? Yeah, I don't think I was able to detect the OS. Again, I'm no Nmap guru. We can, if there's demand for it, we can cover Nmap at a later stage. I generally do what most people do, is go to Google and Google Nmap cheat sheets and look up that way. But there's a lot you can do with Nmap. There's also extensions in terms of scripts, so you can run scripts. These are generally... forgot where they are located. There we go. But these are the built-in scripts that Nmap has. Kali has. And to run it, so for instance, we want to find the HTTP headers. There's a script, the HTTP headers that we can run. And I saw it the other day. There we go. So you can run this against our target server. So you can run it with the ---- script. And off we'll go. It will. Sorry. I don't know, it was 89. Try running with the PN flag. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why it's not running. Oh, thought it was 89. 39. There we go. And it will detect the headers and spit them out. There's a lot of other scripts. You can also try create your own scripts as well. I think that covers it from the base kind of tool set that I use when I do my own testing. My setup. I can't think of anything else for now that covers it a bit more. Certainly there's a lot more to cover. The idea is going forward I'll do a better job of preparing and make sure I have a better agenda and that set out. So apologies for not having that done. It's been problematic trying to just get all of this put together with the streaming and Twitch and all of that at the same time, so I ended up running out of time. But going forward, we'll try to delve into doing more web app focused testing initially on the series. There may be other series regarding mobile and even network. But yeah, I think that's all I have for now. So is there anything anyone wants to ask? Any other questions, comments? And yes, Daniel, we can do a red view one day. That would be cool. For a live kind of demo thing. That would be awesome. Okay, well, thank you for attending and everyone's input. Really appreciate it. I'll try to go through the comments again, see if there are any questions that I missed, and hopefully try to get them answered. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending.